Hi everyone, this is Sarah at Health by Sarah, and right now I'm giving you my week 14 pregnancy update. And I also want to talk about how to deal with morning sickness or nausea, especially during the first trimester. So today I'm going to share with you what has actually worked for me and what has worked for other people as well. So it's a number of tips, and I'm hoping that at least one of them will help you or somebody you know to treat or prevent morning sickness. So the first tip I have is to find the correct homeopathic remedy that fits you. For me, what I was talking about in the previous week, week 13, was how in the beginning, around week 5, I started experiencing nausea all the time, but I wasn't actually getting sick. But then I think it started around week 10, possibly week 11, where I actually started experiencing getting sick and throwing up. So what was happening was the constant nausea went away, but I actually started getting sick and not being able to keep my food down, which was a problem. But it wasn't happening with every meal. It wasn't happening all the time. It was typically happening maybe every 2 days, or maybe a little less frequently than that, but that was probably about on average how it was happening. So my first homeopathic remedy that has truly helped me is Tobacum 200, and I take that twice daily, so once in the morning and once in the evening, and that has helped me so much. As soon as I started taking it, the first day I started taking it, I felt back to normal. I was like, wow, I don't feel any of the symptoms anymore, and it's great. And it hasn't completely eradicated it, but I am taking it for 2 months, twice daily, and hopefully that will completely eradicate it. My next remedy, or actually going back to Tobacum 200, I'm going to read what it actually says in the book. It says, if you're getting sick, not being able to keep food down, that's the remedy you want to take, is Tobacum 200. Nux vomica 6C is the next remedy. If your nausea is worse in the morning, you're vomiting small amounts of food with mucus in them, then take Nux vomica 6C. Now the next one, Ipecac 6C, is one that I actually took because it fit some of my symptoms. And it says non-stop nausea, which is what I was experiencing. Everything vomited up, liquids and solids. So the second part wasn't me, but I started taking Ipecac 6C and I started to feel a little bit better. And I was like, okay, this remedy's working. But then after a few days of taking it, that was when I actually started getting sick. And so I called a friend of mine who is somewhat experienced in homeopathy, and she said, it's possible you might actually be proving the remedy. And I was like, you might be right. So I stopped taking it. And what I mean by proving the remedy, that happens sometimes if you take the homeopathic remedy too many times, and you could actually start experiencing the symptoms that you're trying to prevent or treat. So that's a sign typically that you've taken it too many times, or that it's not the remedy for you. The next one is Pulsatilla 6C. If you have nausea in the evening and if it's wearing off at night, then take this remedy. Ferrum 6C, if you have nausea a few hours after eating and you suddenly vomit everything. That's another one that could have worked for me because that kind of fits my symptoms. So you might want to consider that one. Sepia 6C, if your vomit is full of milky mucus, especially if your temperament is melancholy, irritable, and weepy, then consider Sepia 6C. Conium 6C, if your breasts are hard and swollen. Petroleum 6C, if you have heartburn and you're keeping nausea at bay by constant eating, getting up at night to eat, aversion to meat and fat, and cabbage aggravates your symptoms, then take Petroleum 6C. Lastly, Arsenicum 6C. If you have diarrhea, a burning sensation in your abdomen, and you're feeling restless and exhausted, then consider taking Arsenicum 6C. Alright, so moving on now to my next tip is what I'm wearing on my wrists. And you guys might have seen my Instagram post last week about these things. And what they're called are sea bands, and it's actually spelled like the sea or the ocean, so SEA. And you can buy them at a pharmacy or you can buy them on Amazon, I know. And they have worked wonders. It's definitely the #2 remedy that has worked for me. And that was before I was taking the homeopathy. So that's why I'm putting it second, because the homeopathy was more effective. But I'm actually wearing them as a backup right now, just in case. But actually I've found that since I've been taking the homeopathy that I don't really need to wear them anymore. So the way you wear them, you put them on over your arm and you put it 3 fingers down from the center of the inside of your arm, from the top of where your wrist starts. And that point is the acupressure point that gets rid of nausea. And supposedly it doesn't just help with morning sickness type of nausea, but it can also help with seasickness and other types of nausea. You'll see that on the directions of the sea bands. The next few tips I have go together, and they are to eat more frequently and to eat what you're craving, listen to your body, and meal plan. So I'll kind of break those down. Eating more frequently is really important, and that's something that I definitely had to adjust to, because I'm more of like a 3 meals a day type of person. I just eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I don't need to snack. But things have changed since I've been pregnant, and so I've had to learn to snack between meals, and that's been somewhat of an adjustment for me, just getting things prepared in advance. So that's why I'm talking about meal planning, because that's another thing that I'm not used to doing. I'm kind of used to throwing things together at the last minute, and that hasn't really worked so much for me since I've been pregnant. So I've had to be thinking at least a day or two in advance of what I'm going to be eating for my meals, and not just start to prepare dinner at the very last minute, to start putting it together ahead of time. And that really makes things a lot easier for me, and then I'll just simply have to heat things up. And then the last part of that tip was to eat what you're craving and listen to your body. And what I mean by that is not necessarily to just eat whatever you feel like, because that could be junk food or that could be fast food, and you're nourishing a tiny baby that's growing inside of you, so you want to eat the best quality food. And so that's kind of why it goes together with meal planning, because if you're not planning your meal at the last minute, then you're more likely to prepare something more nutritious. So make sure you keep that in mind. And your cravings can mean things, like if you're craving something sour, then maybe you want something like fermented food, like cabbage, and you don't have to eat a ton of it, but just maybe put a little bit on top of your salad or as a side to your meals. So listening to those cravings is important. But again, that doesn't mean just eat whatever you feel like. The next tips I have go together as well, and that is getting fresh air and sunshine, and exercising, making sure that you sweat while you exercise. So this is kind of a trial and error thing for me. At one of my worst times during the nausea, I was just laying on the couch all day long, just, excuse me, in my misery, and just like wanting to get out of there, but not being able to, not having the energy to. And one of the times I actually made myself do it. I got dressed, I went outside, took a nice little walk, and then I sat by the pool and I got sunshine and I felt great. And it was the combination of all those things that made me feel great. Just getting that, breathing in that fresh air. The sunshine was giving me energy, and also walking was giving me energy, ironically. Like, that's something a lot of experts talk about. When you're feeling tired, sometimes exercise can help give you energy, even though you're not feeling like it. It's kind of something that doesn't necessarily make sense, but it does work, and it's important to exercise, of course. And I found that when I'm actually sweating during exercise, it makes me feel more rejuvenated, more refreshed than if I'm just simply taking a walk and I'm not sweating, not putting a lot of effort into it. So my next tip is a pretty common one, and it's to eat ginger or to drink ginger tea. And I'm going to show you one of the ginger candies that I have. Excuse me. These are gingins, and I picked them up from Whole Foods, but I'm sure you can get it from a number of places. Ginger is a very common remedy, and it actually does relieve morning sickness, at least initially. It doesn't cure it, but it's definitely a go-to if you're needing something right away. So that could be ginger beer, that could be ginger ale, and I would recommend making those at home the traditional way, so you're getting the benefit of the fermentation. I actually have my own pot of ginger beer going, and it'll be ready in a little less than 3 weeks. So I'm really excited for that. You could also just simply have ginger tea, as I said, but there's just so many ways to incorporate ginger, like maybe just incorporate it into a stir fry, but just make sure that you're consuming it at least a little bit here and there. My next tip is to get more protein, specifically trying to eat the Dr. Brewer diet. And after going to Dr. Brewer's website, I saw the recommendations for pregnant women with morning sickness. He recommends that pregnant women get a minimum of 2,600 calories a day, salt your food to taste. You get 80 to 100 grams of protein, good amounts of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. So 80 to 100 grams of protein is a lot. But supposedly that really helps treat morning sickness when you have the right amount of protein in your diet. So I would recommend focusing on breakfast especially to get a good start for the day, and just really try to get a lot of protein into that meal, and it'll set you up for success for the rest of the day, I think. And also when you're snacking, to focus more on protein and fat, like eating cheese or eating beef jerky, eating peanut butter, a handful of nuts, or maybe just drinking some milk or eating a little yogurt. There's so many different ways that you can get protein. But just make sure that that's your focus on your meals. Like, make protein a priority, and then build the rest of your meal around that. My next tip is taking a vitamin B supplement. Now, I will admit that didn't actually help me. I started taking it, and I didn't feel relief from morning sickness, but it has helped some other women. Because I think Dr. Brewer actually said that sometimes it can be a deficiency in vitamin B or vitamin B6. So that's a consideration. And even though it didn't help me with the morning sickness, I'm still taking that supplement, and it's a whole food based supplement because it has folate in it, and I am doing the doctor's recommendation of taking at least 800 grams. I'm not sure if it's in grams or another measure, but 800 of folate every single day, to just as a backup if I don't get it in my diet. And the other way that I'm getting enough folate in is by taking Juice Plus. So this is the Orchard blend, the Vineyard blend, and the Garden blend. Now in the Vineyard there is no folate, but in the Garden and the Orchard there is folate. And it's also a way for me to get enough fruits and vegetables in, because as I said in the week 13 video, it was really hard for me to get in enough vegetables. So taking this Juice Plus supplement was a really great backup plan for me, and it just gave me the reassurance that I was at least getting some of the nutrition I needed. And just so you know, I looked into the folate amounts in Juice Plus, and it's 400, just as much as in my vitamin B supplement. So I'll share those links with you guys in the comments afterwards, so you know where to get them. My very last tip is it actually comes from the Weston Price Foundation. It is to sip on bone broth and raw milk all day long. And I want to say, I think raw milk is a really great thing to have, but I do want to give you guys a word of caution. If you're going to drink it, or if you're planning on drinking it, just make sure you know your farmer, and make sure you know where it comes from. The same thing essentially. But you want to actually visit the farm yourself. You want to see what kind of cleanliness practice they have. And some farmers actually test for their bacteria levels, so that would be another thing to look into, and to just see what their farm looks like. If they're in confinement, that would be a bad sign. And you just want to see if it looks like a really good green pasture, they're eating their natural diet, and if the farmer's cleaning off the udders when they're milking the cows, and they're cleaning it afterwards after milking them, and they're cleaning their equipment. So you just want to make sure they have good cleanliness practices. And that concludes all of my tips for treating morning sickness. And I also want to remind you guys that you are welcome to ask questions and to give comments, and I'll be happy to share them in the next video or future videos. And I definitely want to help as many women as possible, so please send in your questions, and if I don't know the answer, I'll look into it, and I'll be happy to answer it any way that I can. So with that, you guys have a great week, and I will talk to you all next week.